This one is going to be a long one. Baldur's Gate 3. There's a lot I want to say, and I don't want to make this any longer than it needs to be, so let's just jump right in from the beginning. I've never played Dungeons & Dragons. The closest I've been to any form of D&D has been the movie Honor Among Thieves, which I feel like was lost on me, and Knights of the Old Republic, which is one of my favorite games and has a combat system with many parallels to D&D. I've played a lot of CRPGs though, with some of my favorites being Wasteland 3, Underrail, and another game from Larian Studios, Divinity Original Sin 2. I say all this because Baldur's Gate 3 is more like D&D than any other game I've played. So going into it, I was expecting more Divinity, more CRPG goodness that I love. And yes, that's here, but there was so much more that I had to learn, from character building to itemization to skills and combat. It was like playing a brand new genre to me. So at the start, it was exciting because I was learning the systems and I was getting excited as I was able to make my characters stronger and stronger. 200 hours later, and I'm still learning things. I'm still finding new items and builds, new areas I haven't explored, new characters I haven't talked to before. The game is huge, it's vast, it's massive, it's detailed, and in this video I want to discuss what makes every ounce of it worth exploring. There's likely some things I'm gonna miss, some things I'll forget to talk about, but that's part of what makes Baldur's Gate 3 so amazing. Everyone's experience will be a little different.
We steal chickens, curse your crops, seduce your daughters, the list goes on.
First, let's talk about the character building, since this has a major influence on how encounters throughout the game play out. When making your character, you pick a race, a class, a background, the whole 9 yards. This is usually pretty overwhelming to me in games. Races with bonuses, backgrounds, classes, there's so much to pick and you don't want to mess it up and have it bite you later in the playthrough. That's really not the case here. I knew I wanted someone with high charisma, someone persuasive and charismatic, so I made my guy a human, someone I could relate to, and I gave him the entertainer background, something I can't relate to. Boom, done. Sure, I may have picked some subpar spells, but considering at the time I didn't even know what a cantrip was, the game was still clear enough to where I was able to make a character fitting my vision in less than 30 minutes. This is a common theme with Baldur's Gate 3, clarity. Everything you need to know, all the numbers, all the effects are clearly stated, and if you don't know what something does, you simply hover over it and press a button. The tooltip then pops up and gives you the rundown of what something is or what something does. Being frightened means a unit can't move and has disadvantage on attack rolls. Well, what's disadvantage? Well, that's when you roll 2 dice and take the lower of the 2 results. This is all information that the game easily defines and lays out to you, without anything that halts the game to give you page after page of rules. You learn these things as you play. As you come across new items, spells, effects, and terminology, you're able to quickly understand what any and all of it does within seconds with its well-written descriptions. Between this and the dozens, probably hundreds of builds that you can create, Baldur's Gate 3 feels fresh every time you play it. New build, new encounters, new choices to be made, new everything. It really is the game that keeps on giving. Speaking of choices, the story has some fantastic choice and consequence that drives home the feeling of this being a live and reactive world. The first and most obvious choices you will come across will be in dialogue. Dialogue plays out how you'd expect it. The camera zooms in and you pick what you want to say, and the character you're speaking to will respond accordingly. The first thing you'll notice is how cinematic this dialogue camera actually is. Usually in CRPGs, you open dialogue with someone and the camera may zoom in a little, but most of the time you're still in that top-down perspective. That never really bothered me, but seeing this camera angle with the wonderful character models up close really adds to the experience. In something like Fallout or even Mass Effect, characters will stand directly facing each other, with most of the expression being in the character's face. Baldur's Gate 3 goes beyond that. You're not just squared up to someone while you're talking. Characters will move, they'll recoil back if you say something outlandish. They'll lean forward to whisper something. There's body language, there's expression in their movement.
This is serious business, devil.
Dialogue systems live and die on giving the player the option to say things they want to say. When your options boil down to good option, bad option, sarcastic option, It removes any nuance and leaves you with essentially one option per playthrough. Here, it's not like that at all. You can trick people, you can lie to get what you want, you can exploit people, you can be a goody two-shoes and help everyone, or you can kill everyone, and you can do anything in between. This freedom is what drives the experience. You're not following a linear path. I mean, sure, there's Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, but within those acts, it's not go to A, then B, then C. It's go where you want, explore. Sure, go to A, then go to C. Skip B if you want. Go straight to D to get an item, and then come back and destroy A through C with it. Freedom. That's the name of the game. It's all about the game working around you, not the other way around. If there's something you want to do, chances are you can do it here. All this freedom has impact on the story as well, and some things you do will have major consequence, while others will only impact a small portion of the story. It's a good mix of weight though. You won't ruin a playthrough with any single choice, and you'll have ample opportunity to choose your ending path once the game lays everything out for you in the third act. It's about the destination and the journey here. For instance, at the beginning of the game, you come across a druid grove full of tieflings alongside the druids. The tieflings are refugees, and this is where your first main quest comes in. Do you help the tieflings? Do you help the druids? Or better yet, do you help the goblins take over the entire grove and just kill everyone in it? If you take that last option, you do get Menthara, which is my favorite character, just saying. If in any of those choices the tieflings die, you won't see them again. Because they're dead. But if you save them, you'll basically be on a road trip with them to Baldur's Gate. Not only will you feel better this way, knowing that you did the right thing, but it's a change to how Act 2 and even some of Act 3 play out. They offer some quests, they offer shops, and they offer gear. This single interaction changes the rest of the game, and there's stuff like this all over. Sure, the tieflings are one of the bigger choices, since it's the main thing that happens in Act 1, but there's choices and outcomes everywhere, and every corner of the game there's something going on, and it's up to you to approach it how you'd like. The overarching story is nice, and I won't go into detail because I never do, but the basic gist of the situation is that you get infected with this worm, and the worm gives you powers, but it's also known that the worm turns you into an alien, a mind flayer. So, do you tap into this power at the risk of not being able to get rid of it? Or do you fight the worm and try and get rid of it as soon as possible? There's cults, there's gods, there's chosen ones, and there's you. It has its humble beginnings, of course, but by the end of the game, you're saving the world. It's an engaging story, and a somewhat complex one. Lots of names to remember and people to keep track of, so you likely won't catch everything in your first playthrough, but it's relatively easy to understand the path forward and the different routes you can take.
No! Please! Oh.
The characters are what sell this experience though. From party members to story characters to shop vendors, everyone acts and reacts like real people, with everyone being susceptible to a bit of that influential charm from your main character. It's what makes saving the tieflings so rewarding. Sure, you open yourself up to some great loot, but saving them is rewarding enough. Roland, whose sole purpose is to be a pompous twerp at first, ends up saving the children in early Act 2. He isn't even a character you deal with a lot, but once you hear that, you're like, yeah, I guess he's okay now. There's a lot to learn about these folks, but not all of them are what they seem at first. Take the fan favorite Astarion for instance. He's a bit of a slime ball, and he's a bit of a fruit. He lives in the gray area at the start of the game, which makes him prime pickings for a party member. Push him towards taking the moral high ground or to engage with his more selfish side, and by the end of Act 1, not only will he open up to you more, but he can be more easily swayed away from or towards some of his malicious tendencies, culminating in Act 3 where he either becomes fully evil or does the right thing at a critical moment.
You'll get back to me. This is important, devil. When?
This is the same for every companion. Shadowheart, Lae'zel, Will, Karlach, Gale, and more. All these party members have their own stories to tell. Sometimes they get a little frisky and you gotta beat them back with a stick, looking at you, Gale. But on the whole, they're worthwhile additions, and seeing their reactions to your choices feels more like they're companions rather than just party members. They're well-written, well-acted characters that are more than just one-note mannequins. They're funny, they're interesting, and they don't get in the way of every interaction you have. They're great.
I regret many things in my life. Choosing to be here, intact and unexploded, is not one of them.
Aside from betting them, the main use of your party members is to help fight back against the hostile world and its inhabitants. With the aforementioned character builds, combat stays exciting and fresh. You start out as nothing more than a weakling with one attack per turn and only a handful of spell slots. Very quickly you'll maybe find some items, maybe gain a level or two, and before you know it, your power starts growing. It's a satisfying progression. You don't go from 0 to hero in an hour, but you also don't spend so much time in the game barely scraping by. It doesn't take much to get an edge over your opponents. This is where the D&D systems shine through the most for a newcomer like me. You'll miss a lot. Once you get the hang of things, it's not too difficult to minimize your misses and maximize your damage. But no matter how many advantages and high grounds you take, the random element of the dice roll is always there. Thankfully, the dice can also screw over your enemies too. Their firebolts can land for one, if they even hit at all. At the same time, they can get the high ground. They can stun you in different ways. They can get the upper hand. The AI puts up a decent enough fight while giving you enough opportunities to swing the battle in your favor. Even on the higher difficulties, you can maintain the upper hand with a bit of planning and care. I can't stress enough the emphasis on builds in Baldur's Gate. I love building characters. It's why I love RPGs so much. Being able to look at the numbers and combine items and skills and buffs to just eviscerate the opposition is so much fun. Multiclassing is also something that I didn't know I needed in my life. Multiclassing is exactly what it sounds like. You can level in multiple classes. You get all the benefits of each class, with the only caveat being that you can only level to 12. Going 10 levels into Paladin means you only have 2 more levels for another class like Fighter. It also means you miss out on levels 11 and 12 in Paladin, so there's trade-offs. Each level holds so much power, so much potential. With only a couple hours into the game, you're already seeing items and skills with synergy potential. When you're not beating up goblins for their lunch money or discussing political agendas with tyrannical overlords, you'll be exploring the world and taking anything that isn't nailed down. And even then, a hammer with a strength check could solve that nailed down part. There are 3 acts, the first of which takes place where the alien ship you were on crash landed. There's a lot to do here, from the Druid Grove I mentioned to visiting the Underdark for some shrooms to having dealings with a swampy hag. That's not offensive, the game calls her a hag. I mean, she's literally a hag. It's a great place to start out, and there's a lot of items that could potentially pull a build together for most of the game. A stool you can break the leg off to use as a club, and oh look at this, it gives you extra strength. Or a spear that, when thrown, it returns to you automatically. Or gloves that just set your dexterity to 18. These locations may be rewarding to explore on their own, but hey, a few powerful items doesn't hurt as motivation either.
What about me?
Act 1 is a really good starting point and brings up curiosities that pull you in. It doesn't do a lot of explaining, but it does do a lot of showing, setting up various ideas that the next 2 acts run with. In Act 2, you'll be in the Shadow-Cursed Lands. This is where the story starts to pick up and you start meeting some of the characters that are pretty important to what's going on. There's some unique bosses to take on, and you even get to visit the Gauntlet of Shar. It's all about lifting, or not lifting, the curse on the lands. And at the end of Act 2, you'll have a clear understanding of what is actually going on with the cult and who's behind everything.
Try again.
Act 3 takes place in the city of Baldur's Gate. The best part for me is when you first arrive and you take all the gold you've earned thus far and you just go on a mad shopping spree. There's so many shops in Baldur's Gate, and a lot of them sell some of the most powerful items in the game. Once you get here, you'll either likely be level 10 or 11, and it won't take long to reach 12 should you engage with the content here. And there's still a bit of game to play once you do reach 12. which I like since you can really put your builds to the test here. Combat encounters here do not hold back. They throw a lot of enemies at you, and a lot of those enemies have very powerful spells and special effects. They can be a stiff challenge, and having a mix of crowd control, single target damage, and survivability is paramount. The overall pace of the game I think works to its favor. It's a little heavy on the story in the later half of the game, but as someone who is coming to grips with the systems, for me, it was a nice pace.
Provoke the blade and suffer its sting.
Baldur's Gate 3 is an incredible game and an expertly crafted experience. The love, care, and talent that has gone into this game is unlike anything I have ever seen. I've played a lot, and I mean a lot of games, a lot of different genres, a lot of different budgets and development team sizes, and I have never seen a game that is done quite to the level that Baldur's Gate 3 has been done. There is no possible way I see another game being made to this degree in a very long time, potentially ever. I'll gladly eat those words if one is made, though. If you like RPGs, just play it already. You probably already have. If you don't like RPGs, I implore you, give it a try. I think you'll find that Baldur's Gate 3 will reward your time with one of the most fun, immersive, expansive, and replayable experiences that gaming can offer.